I want to start this off by making an apology, Matt Blair.
Okay.
I don't think you get enough screen time on game trailers.
I think I get plenty.
You, for anyone who's like, who's this guy? This is Matt Blair. Matt sometimes works harder than any of us because he's the one who, you are, the buck stops with you. If without you, we would be a bunch of insane people that just make videos that no one watches. Because if you weren't around, no one would get to watch them because they actually wouldn't. You know, you are the gatekeeper. These videos die and go to heaven, and you're the person that greets them at the gates.
Yeah, we have a
what
couple
are you?
more.
An episode of Final Bossman. Wait in line. Okay, you may pass, and people can watch you now. And you love games. You play games all the time. You have your PS4 is typically at your desk. Like you capture videos on the PS4 and bring them in, which none of us have done. Like all of us schlep our little recording devices around, and like you actually you problem solve, and none of us I think have that skill. Game trailers. So
wow, thank you.
I think you have a very interesting perspective on the year's games. You reviewed a couple games for us this year. I mean, Littlebigplanet 3, is that one of your games of the year?
Yes, I would say so. Yeah, I mean, I came into this thinking like, all right, well, trying to pick my favorite games of the year, it seemed a little bit difficult. And so what I actually wanted to do is maybe come with something that was a little bit more broad instead of just each game. I was thinking of doing the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Damiani had a list that was similar to that.
Okay. I usually like to end things on a high note, so I think I'll go backwards.
Oh, okay.
But the ugly kind of ties into the other game I reviewed, which would be NHL 15.
Right.
And many other games did this. The ugly of the year, I would say, is post-release content updates. A lot of games did this, and most of them did it like in a way that kind of did a sales pitch, where it's like, you can buy this game and you're going to get more later when we're done with it. But really, all it is just covering up for them not being able to hit their targets on time for a lot of different game modes.
Shadow of Mordor is a fascinating example because people were like, here's a game that was not on people's radar. It comes out, everyone's really excited. All the extra stuff comes out, people are like, ugh. You know, like I saw a lot of headlines lately where they're like, this all sucks. Like all the expanded content is just awful. Like if I bought the season pass for that game, I'd be really disappointed. But you should play the game itself. And like that's such a weird, the DLC can kind of have its own life in a good way or a bad way.
The season pass, I think we kind of established in even previous years that usually, at least through the energy that you can measure through the fans, the season pass never pays off. Almost never. But I mean, like,
risk,
the post-release content updates are always, and the worst offenders are NHL 15. I know I reviewed it, so like I'm biased, but they added entire game modes afterwards that they promised but just couldn't deliver on. Drive Club did much of a similar thing, although that's, you know, you can balance that between them having just crippling bugs.
Right.
And I guess Unity is kind of in the same category. Assassin's Creed Unity just did a big, 40 gigabyte update or something like that. There are more, and I'm sure they'll let us know in the comments, anybody who's been playing games that just have kind of suffered. You've expected a game to come with a certain amount of stuff, and then they're like, they'll print it on the back of the box saying, this is a feature of this game, but they might put an asterisk saying, later on, you might be able to do this.
Right.
That is the ugliest thing, I think, from this year. And I know it's like the first full calendar year with the new platforms. People are still kind of feeling it out, getting used to developing. I understand that, but it's still something that happened, and it's a pretty ugly thing this year.
I think the important thing to note is that it's a line that certain developers have drawn where they're like, yeah, we'll do this, but that's not a big deal. And clearly what they've done is like separate themselves and actually give other developers that don't do that, props, and kind of realize like, hey, here's a sell that we never actually thought of before. That like you can get this game right away and it works, and it's not not going to be buggy. And so yeah, that's something it's like, okay, if you want to be on the other side of that and you want to be known for doing that, like which Ubisoft, a game that I typically a company I would typically think about is like they make really polished stuff. Like that's why I like the Assassin's Creed series. I felt that like, yeah, we're getting yearly installments of these, but these are all pretty fantastic games, and it's like, I don't think that necessarily anymore.
Yeah.
Like this was not a good year.
The times have changed a little bit.
Right.
And hopefully next year that kind of gets improved upon. Now on to the bad. And
That's all you got for ugly? That's it?
That's it. One thing per category, even though it might stretch a few different games. But the bad this year, I have to say it goes to Microsoft. And there's two chief reasons for that.
Chief reasons?
Chief reasons. And it's mishandling of their properties, two in particular. Project Spark, incredibly disappointing.
Interesting. Yeah.
Incredibly disappointing.
Not a game that ever came up at all, even to like knock it off the shelf for Game of the Year award contention.
Yep.
And no one sitting, on that chair this whole time has brought that up.
We even wanted to review it, but it's so complicated because there were so many pushbacks and things of that nature. But when you really dig into it, and I'm sure there are some people out there who can really love it. There are a lot of games out there, much to the kind of the style of Littlebigplanet. You have your core audience that really dig it and build games and make it worth your while to play. But Project Spark has like a handful of different texture packs. It doesn't matter which texture pack you either buy or use. It looks like Fable. And I like that, but only to a certain extent. It's very extremely limited, and that was handled.
It kind of reminds me of something like Titanfall, which is strictly multiplayer, or like Minecraft when it first launched that had like no real structure. It was the kind of game you jumped into, you're like, what exactly am I doing here? Whereas you have something like, again, Littlebigplanet, that, you can go in and build all these crazy levels, but you have this awesome campaign. Like Infinity, it's like there are these play sets that you can do that clearly show, like, here's what you're supposed to do with all these fun tools. Now take this stuff and go run with it.
Sure.
And like, maybe Project Spark really needed that, like needed a core adventure that like while you're going through, you're having all these ideas like, wow, I really like that thing that they built, instead of just throwing you right into the deep end and just like build, because that's all you can really do.
Sure. And a couple of E3s ago, we even saw it on the floor, and it was the only thing I saw that was like, wow, I might genuinely really want to get an Xbox One when it comes out. It impressed me that much. The interface is extremely powerful, or it makes you feel powerful at least, and it's pretty intuitive, and it's available on PC, Windows 8 at least, and Xbox and that sort of thing. So there were a lot of things that they did right, or at least they showed us they wanted to do it right, but then the content within just kind of fell flat. It could have been so much more.
It's funny, we never actually had this post-mortem conversation about Spark. Like, you were working on Spark, you were playing it, you were kind of throwing out ideas like at work, because you're right outside my office, so just kind of like, when I go up to ask you about content and stuff, it's like, oh, what's that, or what did you build? And then just the conversation was over.
Yep.
The next Monday, we were all talking about different games, and I just didn't even, no one brought that up. Like, what happened to Spark?
And now you know. Within the game, that's where it is.
Fascinating. Thank you for bringing that game up. No one's going to talk about that. So what was good?
So, well, hang on. Before we get to that, there's
Before
part
we're done.
2. And that is Rare Limited. Rare Limited, we saw Connect Sports Rivals.
Right.
Do you remember that?
Well, I wasn't anticipating a heck of a lot from Connect Sports Rivals.
I don't think anybody was, and I don't think
or
it
Shape
delivered.
Up or anything. Yeah.
And it flopped. It was a horrible, horrible flop. And one of the notorious layoffs this year was Rare shortly after that game released. Think about the back catalog of Rare and what you actually have at your disposal. Like they did Banjo-Kazooie, but it was a vehicle game, which I liked a lot actually. But think of all the different properties that they could have been taking advantage of. Perfect Dark, Banjo-Kazooie, Conquer. The only thing that we saw from Conquer today was a trailer for him in Project Spark.
Right.
What?
Yeah.
I think that the way that Microsoft handled Rare, especially when you think about the layoffs, especially with the way you think like how they treated not only the properties that Rare has, but also the developers that they let go because of a project that I'm pretty sure was forced upon them. Very, very poor way to handle one of the best.
Especially when you look, it's
Developers in
frustrating when
industry.
you look at something, and granted, like there's different piles of cash that can be resourced here, but like you look at somebody like Blizzard, who it's like they don't have a franchise that's not humming right now.
Right.
So it's frustrating to see all of these things, and it's like you can't pick one. You gotta. Yeah.
You have to imagine that all of the brilliant minds, especially the ones that were there before the layoffs, I'm sure they did everything they could with Connect Sports Rivals, but they're working on the Connect. And
The word rare is like the word Last Guardian. It's like I don't even want to hear it in
Yeah.
conversation because it's just like, it just
and
brings you
thus
down.
that's why it
automatically.
caps off the bad
Or like
category.
Half-Life 3, just like, nah.
Yep. And that
Or Shenmue.
that's well, I was going to mention Shenmue, but I was trying to keep it to one.
So what was good? I'm actually glad that you went in the positive direction because I'm feeling a bit suicidal. What's good about 2014?
Good. Interestingly enough, even though it was kind of a shallow year for new content, the good, actually, in my opinion, was all of the DLC and or HD remasters that we had. And I know that people usually roll their eyes at HD remasters in general.
Not me. Love them.
Exactly. But the thing
Love
is
'em.
that there are so many people out there that didn't buy a particular console of the last gen. You know, we're in the generations now where you just either buy one or
Right.
you just don't get them all. And so HD remasters are a perfect way to be able to catch up on a franchise if you didn't own the console in the previous gen.
My big one is the Mass Effect remaster. If that ever happens, they're like the entire trilogy, all of the download things, $60.
Yeah.
PlayStation 4. I'm taking the week off, and I mean, not that that's even going to come close to like getting through all that stuff, but like dabble a little bit in the first game, but never play those other ones. So it's like perfect opportunity to like.
And they did that in
go
last
back and
gen.
do it.
They did that in last gen with the trilogy, and
Yeah.
it's an excellent deal, and it's one of my favorite franchises of the past decade, frankly.
But yeah, no, you're preaching to the choir with me as
Yeah.
far as like remasters go.
But
I'm
as
down.
you know, I mean, Halo collection, it's a perfect idea for the Xbox One. It didn't
yeah, the
didn't pan
concept's
out
good.
quite so well yet, but you know they'll get there hopefully. Last of Us, GTA, just the list keeps going on and on. Now, in terms of expansions, during our Game of the Award, Best of 2014 awards, our deliberation for expansion was
Very heated.
very heated, but
Yeah.
also very constructive and very positive, just because it was such a great year for expansions, from Diablo to World of Warcraft to even Hearthstone,
Final Fantasy 14.
Final Fantasy.
Yeah, which I actually like, was directly involved in because I played that game for a couple months and like definitely felt like, wow, this cool new thing just happened, and that was just an update. That just
Yep.
they made an announcement and boom, there you go. Without anywhere near the fanfare of something that a lot of these AAA titles would be like, hey, we have this new outfit,
Yeah.
And it's like, all right, whereas
And-
like brand new modes and stuff for free. I mean,
Yeah.
with subscription, but
Sure. But all of the progress in that ground makes me feel like at the end of this kind of, well, sort of the end, the twilight hours of the previous generation, people are starting to put their perfections in. They're starting to kind of perfect their craft before we make that final leap to the current gen, as it were.
So adding stuff onto games post-launch is something is just inevitable, especially as we're moving off the disc and into the digital age.
Sure.
But your point being, there are good ways to do it and there are ugly ways to do it.
Yes.
As far as just trying to fix something after the fact or cover the fact that you didn't complete your development versus we actually had this, or in the case of something like Diablo, we realized there were things wrong, and so we're actually not just going to leave the project. We're going to take the opportunity when we add more stuff and fix everything.
Yep.
So. Heists, it's like everybody
Heists.
bitched and then now they're here, and it's like, oh, it might have been worth the wait.
Yep.
So again, you have a very unique perspective on our company, on our industry, and all the awesome games we play this year. So thank you for remembering them. Thank you for tossing them out there, and good discussion. I appreciate it.
Thank you.